I think one of the questions is when people ask who are your constituents, and I think that's at the core of the question, and I think the constituents are all the residents of Marin. Everyone has the potential to be a student at College of Marin, and everyone, at least taxpayers, contribute to run the district. So in that sense, everyone is touched by and is part of College of Marin. In terms of when people come to meetings, I think that it's important that the public come and voice their opinions. I certainly listen to their opinions, but I'm also mindful that there's a lot of people who don't come to meetings, and how we are able to get their input is really an outreach question. But I don't just decide based on who comes to meetings and speaks to the board. I think about what's best for the students and what's best for the district. Well, one of them is we have a structural deficit, and that means that no matter what we do, we're having to tap our reserves until we kind of get the finances in order. And part of what the board has done to approach that challenge is we've done 5-year budgeting projections. So we're really looking at, we made some cuts in classes that we knew would result in a dip in enrollment, but it'll allow us, as money comes in after the downturn in the economy, and we're seeing the property taxes increase, that we'll be able to add back classes, and we'll be able to do that strategically. So it was a very thoughtful process, and it was kind of a chaos opportunity where, you know, it was difficult to make those decisions, but we didn't lay off staff, we didn't lay off faculty. We were able to work within the structure that we had. The other is accreditation, and certainly with respect to other colleges that have had challenges with respect to accreditation, I think it's the board's responsibility that we stay on top of that, and that we make sure that we're checking in with the CEO and having our regular reports to make sure that we are in fact staying on top of the promises we make in our various midterm reports and in our self-studies. The third is student success, and it's not in order that way. I think they're all three issues, that if we have to have the money to run the programs, to have the students, and the Student Success Initiative, I think, was a very important piece of legislation. It forced us to turn our enrollment priorities upside down, which I think was a good thing. Students with a lot of education that many people in Marin County have were able to register before students who were just trying to get into classes, and that was upside down. And so fortunately, with looking at enrollment priorities and saying what's important, I think we're saying to the high school graduates of the county, you're important to us, you're a priority, and we'll help you get the classes that you need. We invested in a program that's supposed to help students with planning and setting their goals, and that's what student success is about. It's setting goals and having help along the way to make sure that students can achieve them. We take responsibility, and we're stewards for all the funds that come to the College of Marin, and because we're basic aid, predominantly it's property tax. And so property tax comes to the college, as well as state funding for specific programs like Disabled Student Services. And the job of the trustee is to make sure that we set the budget and do the long-term planning that I talked about, to really look at when we have both dips in enrollment or we have dips in revenue sources, how we're going to balance at the end of the year, and staying on top of the reserves that the board has to set for the district, and making sure that as we tap the reserves, having a plan to refill them. And I think that the part about how you know you're a good steward, some of it is really understanding the budget, and also part of it is listening to when we have our audits at the end of each fiscal year, to really say, did we do what we said, and are there any concerns that an independent review brings to our attention. And so I think in that regard, that's how the board is a good steward of the money that's given to us. I think everything that a trustee does reflects on the district, and so, you know, whether you consider yourself an ambassador of the district or a representative of the district, everything and anything that we do and say can reflect on the district, and so it needs to be positive. Certainly there are challenges that a board member can have with another board member, that we may disagree on a vote, how one was cast over another, and that has to be done with a level of civility and respect, and difference of opinions recognized and acknowledged. But it doesn't mean that we walk around and badmouth each other. Certainly I think there are better capable trustees than others, and I think that some people have different ways of understanding and learning issues, and there can be some frustration with that. Some may not come as prepared as others, and I certainly have had my level of frustration with that. I think the main goal is to recognize that one trustee doesn't have any power or responsibility. We're one of 7, and we have to work together. Well, I think that feeds on what I was just saying as far as board conduct and understanding the roles and responsibilities of a trustee. I think that when people use public office for a stepping stone to other public office, they don't pay attention, they don't mind the store as well as they should. And that's not saying that there's anyone currently on the board that's doing that, but I have seen where it's not as effective, because I don't think that trustees using it for a higher political office are as able to understand their roles and responsibilities, because they're thinking of their vote in terms of the next office. When we have hardworking people as trustees that are there to do what's good for the college and good for the students, then I think you have a very different end result. And that what you see is people who understand their roles, they respect the role of the superintendent president, they recognize they're not the superintendent, and that the board has a role to play, but it also is in a context of, we have professionals. We have the academic senate professionals that are supposed to be making the academic recommendations. We have the administrative professionals, the CEO that is to recommend the budget, and the board, other issues that we deal with directly with the superintendent. And so I think it's understanding the roles, and when people get their role and take on the responsibility attendant with it, you have a much better board, and I think there's less hurt. Well, the Ed Code says that there will be elected boards. It defines who the boards are, what the jurisdictional areas will be. It defines what the role of the Chancellor's office is. It tells us basically what our mission is, and that predominantly we are to focus on transfer, workforce development, basic skills, and English as a second language. We have the opportunity in Marin, because we are basic aid, to have much more of a lifelong learning program than perhaps most community colleges in the state. But the Ed Code does speak to what our mission is in that regard. Also, it speaks to, I mentioned the deferring to the professionals. The 10+1 under the Ed Code says that the board makes the choice to defer primarily to the academic senate on academic decisions. And in that case, the Ed Code does provide the structure, and it talks about the participatory governance that is to be in place for community colleges. So it provides a lot of the guidelines in which we are to follow, and as far as I know, we're doing a fine job meeting the requirements of the Ed Code. Again, I think it goes to the question, the earlier question about understanding the roles and responsibilities of the board, and also conducting ourselves in a way that always reflects the best light on the district. We can't ever really take off our trustee hat. As long as we're an elected official, it's kind of a 24/7 that we have to be thinking about our personal conduct and how it can reflect on the district. The Code of Ethics also involves, reporting our financials, arrangements as far as where we get our income, if there's any conflict of interest. And the Ethics Code also includes that we will disclose if we do have conflicts of interest, that if there are actions taken by another trustee, we're to discuss at least whether there should be censure. And the Code of Ethics really is thinking about the district in the best position possible, and to make sure that we don't undermine the integrity of the institution in our own conduct and how we deal with each other and how we deal with the public.